Hello, everybody. This is episode 3 of our sub podcast called Founding Feckheads, which is a sub podcast of the dumb podcast, The Gym. Yes, okay, and we have sound effects now. Okay, good. Just like they did in 1803, the exact
Right.
same sound effects.
Yep.
We're here to discuss.
I'll stop.
Welcome to a more naive, better time when America was great. We're here to discuss Thomas Jefferson, the third president of these here United States of America. What's Trump now? Does he count as 47, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think it's 47.
Let's talk about Thomas Jefferson. There's no regular intro to this. We don't do this is a different one, so we're going to do things differently, which is why I'm not wearing a hat.
We're recording this the day after people were doing Nazi salutes at inauguration of our fascist president.
Yeah. That's still not the most outrageous thing that happened yesterday. That's rough to listen to. Like, officially now, the official American policy is there's only two genders. Officially now, American policy is there's only two colors, folks. Green and blue. If you use any other colors, it's not official.
Well, if there's any doubt that he's a fascist, he just let you know right out the fucking gate. So.
Well, the fascists came for the trans people.
Yep.
Passing anti-trans laws kills people. It gets them killed. Yep. And we're trying to avoid killing kids at all points, which is why we're against the genocide in Palestine and why we're against anti-trans legislation. I'm trying to not kill kids. That's my basic, all right? Yeah. You said you were done, Seamus. Okay. But we're not here to discuss that. We're here to discuss number 3, who is a man named Thomas Jefferson. Surely somebody like Thomas Jefferson, as illustrious and august a persona as Thomas Jefferson, is beyond criticism. Here we go. Thomas Jefferson was the third president of the United States after George Washington and John Adams. He established the Democrat-Republican Party with James Madison, specifically to act against the Federalist Party. We discussed all this before, by the way. So if you think we're throwing a lot of stuff at you, just watch the previous ones.
There's going to be so much that we're going to leave out.
Okay. Well, there has to be, because we're a podcast, not a Wikipedia.
And I don't mean to do this live, throwing this on the Barry, but we may have to consider doing hey, this is just an update, and we talk about 3 people that we talked about before that and more shit.
Yeah, it's possible.
There's so much that we're just trying to get covered in short time.
I'm quite aggressive. So, I think of the two of us, I'm very aggressive about keeping it under an hour.
Yep.
Yeah, so we did with all our podcasts. Is there any podcast we ever did where we actually covered everything we wanted to? Maybe Freddie Hampton, did we? No. So Jefferson established the Democrat-Republican. It was just called the Democrat-Republican Party. That's one party, right? Democrat-Republican is one party with James Madison, specifically to act against the Federalist Party, another party, Federalist Party, which was established by Alexander Hamilton and John Adams. Check out Founding Feckheads 1 for a discussion of the differences between the parties and how these differences were hopelessly mismanaged by George Washington during his presidency. And check out Founding Feckheads 2 for a discussion of the presidency of John Adams and how he made specific efforts to neutralize his vice president, Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson won the 1800 U.S. presidential election. Eventually, there was a whole thing, but as I said, we're leaving it out, and took office in 1801. Now, first of all, let's have a look at slavery for one paragraph. Like George, in the green room, we were deciding which ones we were going to read out. So a bit of a knife fight, but this is what we settled on, okay?
Go for it.
Slavery. Like George Washington, Jefferson often spoke against slavery in a general abstract way, but in a specific concrete way, he owned hundreds of slaves during his life and did very little to move towards abolition. He's on record as suspecting that the blacks, already brilliant, right? The blacks, whether originally a distinct race or made distinct by time and circumstances, are inferior to the whites in their endowments both of body and mind, but that hopeful advances are making towards their re-establishment on an equal footing with the other colors of the human family. Well, I guess thanks for admitting they're human.
Yeah. I always like whenever it's somebody in power, it's like, hopefully somebody will do something about this.
We just re-elected the same government in Ireland last month, right? We elected the same government that's overseen the biggest housing crisis in the history of the state for 14 years, and now they're full of ideas about how to deal with it during the campaign, Anyway, go on, your bit.
All right, so we're going to talk about Monticello, which is Thomas Jefferson's
is that how you pronounce that?
Monticello.
I have always called it Monticello.
Yeah.
No, not Am I wrong?
Yeah, I don't know. Potato. It's an iconic plantation in Virginia, stands as a testament to both architecture and ingenuity of its owner in the brutal system of slavery that sustained it. At its peak, Monticello was home to about
You're doing it
400
now.
enslaved individuals. Sorry, my computer messed up there for a second. Over the course of Jefferson's lifetime, they were integral to every aspect of the plantation life, including agriculture, construction, domestic service, and skilled crafts. Some of the prominent names among them were, sorry, my computer keeps freezing. Okay, included Isaac Jefferson, a blacksmith, Peter Hemmings, a chief and brewer, James Hemmings, a trained French chef and brother of Sally Hemmings, which we're
Okay.
going to talk about here in just a few.
Imagine
The
owning
Daily,
400 people. I feel kind of bad that I own
oh
a cat.
jeez, yeah,
It's
right.
mad, isn't it?
The daily lives of the enslaved Monticellos were marked with relentless labor.
Mm.
Jefferson maintained meticulous records of his slaves' productivity, treating them as economic units rather than human beings. Enslaved men worked very long hours in the fields, produced crops like tobacco and wheat, while women often performed domestic duties or worked in a textile workshop. Children, too, were put to work from a very young age. Jefferson's approach to slavery was pragmatic and dehumanizing. He
Because of
believed
course
in
it was.
hmm, he believed in strict discipline and implemented measures to ensure maximum efficiency. For example, he used an overseeing seer system, employing individuals like Gabriel Lilly, who was known for his cruelty, to manage and discipline the enslaved workers.
Well, now you see, they
Slaves.
criticize his methods, but he gets results.
Exactly, right? Trains on time. In a
Oh,
letter
fuck
dated
me.
1811,
Yeah.
Jefferson instructed his overseer to apply severe measures to those who disobeyed, reflecting his belief in maintaining control through fear and punishment.
Okay, so this guy was acting under Jefferson's orders. He wasn't going
Yep.
off the grid being unkind to these people.
Right. I mean, he was already a prick, but
Yeah, but he was
Jefferson's like,
under
hey, I think
orders.
you could
Yeah.
bring this like prick game and this like skill set that you have of being just an absolute human or
Fuck with you.
inhumane person to these people.
Yeah.
I think you could step it up for me, bro. Okay, you just need to kick it
Yeah.
up a notch. You know,
Productivity's down. You need to whack it up a bit.
that's right.
Jesus.
Punishment at
What did
Marcello's
was that a farm? What did they grow in Monticello?
wheat, uh, wheat and tobacco
Wheat and
mainly.
tobacco. Okay.
Yeah, mainly. Yeah, he also had a textile
And
shop where
textiles.
he's put out stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Monticello were harsh and intended to severe deterrence. Enslaved individuals who attempted to escape or showed resistance were subject to brutal retaliations. Whippings were common. Jefferson himself noted in his farm book that such measures were necessary to maintain order.
Oh, fuck his farm book.
The case of James Hubbard, an enslaved man who escaped multiple times, illustrated the cruelty of the Monticello regime. After his final recapture, Hubbard was sold away from his family as a punishment, a common practice Jefferson employed to break the will of his enslaved individuals, which he learned a lot of this from his father in law, because his father in law practiced this kind of.
Yeah.
We practice two things involving slaves. We're talking about one of them right now. We'll get to the other in a
Okay.
second. To break the wills of his enslaved people and prevented further insubordination. Enslaved
Like breaking
mothers,
up families. Yeah.
enslaved mothers such as those in the Hemmings families lived in constant fear of their children being sold. Emotional trauma inflicted by such practices was stark remembrance of inhuman conditions under which they lived.
Yeah.
Now, the Monticello was not merely a plantation, it was a microcosm of the larger system of dehumanization of African Americans and reducing them to status of lifeless robots, valued solely for their labor. The mansion was rigged with sliding doors and conveyances where slaves would remain on the other side, out of sight of all white guests,
Wow.
right? But they were produced whatever was demanded.
So
Excuse
they're
me.
like literally erased
Yes,
by the
it's not
architecture.
the best example I could kind of like if anybody's ever watched Star Trek,
Yeah.
especially the Next Generation, the Replicator, computer Earl Grey,
Oh
it's
yeah.
pretty much the same thing where Jefferson would shout. Sometimes there would be like a little horn thing that he'd speak into,
Yes.
and he would pipe onto the other side of the wall and say, "Hey, cup of coffee, 2 sugars." And then a bell would ring. He would slide a little window open, and there would be his what he
Oh,
requested.
no black people visible.
No,
Wow.
you weren't
Okay.
allowed to see him. No, it'd be the
Okay.
same thing if they had their dinners. The the food would appear on the other side. Uh,
Holy shit!
I believe whenever it was like family, sometimes he would have like the actual housemaid or whatever to actually serve the food.
Yeah.
But if it was just
Wow.
put the dishes
Erased
on the
by
other side.
architecture.
Yes, yeah, totally dehumanizing, right?
Yes.
Jefferson's relying on his system despite his intellectual opposition to it underscores the pervasive hypocrisy that marked the early years of the American Republic.
Okay.
So now we should talk about a particular slave. Let's talk about how he treated Sally Hemings.
Sally Hemings.
Yep. So just specifically, we're going to talk about the women, but we're going to talk about this one because pretty sure this wasn't the only woman that had this
I've heard
issue.
about her.
Yeah, she was born in 1773, was a daughter of Elizabeth Hemings, an enslaved woman, and likely half sister of Jefferson's wife, Martha, because that's what Tommy's Jeff's father-in-law liked to fuck him some women, liked to fuck him some slaves, and
Yeah.
he had a lot of children through those slaves, so it was kept it in the family, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That
this
sounds like a lot of consent he didn't get.
No, he did not. The familiar connection already placed Sally Hemings in a complex, precarious position within the Jefferson household. 1787, when she was about 14, she accompanied Jefferson's youngest daughter, Mary, to Paris, where Jefferson was serving as the American minister to France. In France, slavery was legal, and Hemings could have escaped for her freedom. However, it is believed that Jefferson promised her extraordinary privileges, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, to eventually the freedom of her future children when she returned to Virginia with him.
What
This
I don't
promise,
understand. What's the wink, wink, no judge of extraordinary privileges?
as in, well, I promise, whenever you get home, we have kids, those kids could be free.
That's it. That's the extraordinary privilege. Okay.
Yeah, that's what's believed. Yeah, this promise underscores the power imbalance between Jefferson and Hemings, making a notion of consent problematic.
Yeah.
Historical records and oral history of the Hemings family suggest that Hemings had 6 children who survived to adult, all of whom are believed to be been fathered by Jefferson.
All of them.
Yep. Yeah.
He's just constantly on top of this young one.
Yep.
All
Harriet Beverly, an unnamed child who died shortly after birth. Harriet, Madison, and Eston. DNA testing conducted in 1998.
Wait. Is there 2 Harriets?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And they're about 6 years apart, so that's got to be really,
Weird.
DNA testing conducted in 1988, compelling evidence that a male member of the Jefferson family fathered Eston Hemings, with Jefferson being the most likely candidate. The relationship between Jefferson and Hemings must be understood within the context of slavery, where enslaved women had little autonomy over their bodies. The power dynamic inherited to the relationship suggests that Heming had legitimate limited
why are you
agency,
using diplomatic language?
Yeah,
it's all very kind of nicely said. Like, why are we dancing around this? Like, multiple rape.
He raped her. He raped her. Right.
Yeah.
Jefferson's
limited agency.
Also, I know sometimes euphemisms are fun, right? Early Jefferson biographies often dismissed and ignored relationship, while later historians, especially after the DNA evidence, generally accepted this likelihood that he was raping these kids or these women. In 2017, archaeologists, and I wish I had a picture of this. Actually, there's no pictures today. Sorry, folks. Archaeologists excavated.
Look on your $2 bill.
Yeah. Archaeologists excavated an area in Jefferson's Monticello mansion, which appears to be living quarters of Sally Hemings. The Hemings' living quarters was adjacent to the Jefferson's bathroom, her room, which she shared with her children. Her 6 children was 14 feet and 18 inches wide, 13 feet long. That's fucking small, dude. For 6 people?
Yeah.
Fuck that. It went unnoticed for decades. The space was converted into a men's bathroom in 1941, considered by some to be the final insult to the Hemings legacy. So, yay! Now you can talk about happy stuff.
That's grim.
Yeah, it's fucking disgusting what it is.
Yeah, and you have a line up here that we skipped over, but I'm going to read it out. Can I do that?
Oh, did I? Yeah, go for it.
This is a line you wrote. Even if affection or a semblance of domestic life existed between Jefferson and Hemings, the conditions of slavery render true consent impossible. This is very important also in a modern context.
Yep.
You can find yourself in a situation where consent is compromised, even in people you get along with or people you happen to be in a relationship with. And that doesn't cancel out any of those things, as we learned from Neil Gaiman. Right. This is about
yeah.
This is about, they liked him. This is
Yeah.
this next bit is about the Louisiana Purchase. If we can skip away from the slavery to something a little bit more cheerful, the annihilation of Native Americans. Jesus, this guy was a piece of work, wasn't he, Thomas Jefferson? And he's one of the good guys. He's one of the better guys we're going to talk about. In 1803, Napoleon sold a huge tract of land to the United States. Huge tracts of land to the United States for $15 million. It included the current states of Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and North Dakota, and bits of other states. At the risk of stating the obvious, the Native American tribes who lived in these areas were not consulted, and the national policy was, again without their consultation, assimilation, or worse, civilization. And this is
another Star Trek reference, assimilation.
Civilization, yeah.
The Borg.
Yes. Well, this is another recurring theme in many of our shows, is decisions being made at a high level about what happens to certain people without their consultation.
Yep, it's kind of odd,
Yeah. The Indians were ranging from not in love with to absolutely hating the idea of assimilation, and none of them wanted to be civilized, right? Why would you? Fuck me. Jefferson told U.S. Secretary of War Henry Dearborn, who then at the time oversaw Indian affairs, "If we are constrained to lift the hatchet against any tribe, we will never lay it down until that tribe is exterminated or driven beyond the Mississippi," by which he meant like to the west of the Mississippi. Accordingly, the years after the Louisiana Purchase could be framed as a series of legal actions to relocate various Indian tribes from the eastern areas to the newly acquired land. This ethnic cleansing, what else can you call it? This ethnic cleansing led to the Trail of Tears in 1830, which we will presumably cover in more detail in a future episode. We'll have to, won't we?
Yep.
I feel like it's going to crop up. The sudden acquisition of huge tracts of land put southern slaveholders on high alert. If this new land were to be settled and planted, they were very much of the opinion that slaves would be required. The slave revolt in Haiti, which if you want to hear about it, look at our episode 1 of Uphold Democracy, led to a sudden influx of Haitian landowners and slaves who felt this was the ideal solution to their problems in Haiti. The fights about whether each new bit of land planted would be a slave state eventually led to the Missouri Compromise in 1820, which admitted Missouri. The reason I'm saying it like that is because people from Missouri say that. They say Missouri as a slave state, but banned, like saying, instead of saying Maryland, you have to say Maryland. The Missouri Compromise of 1820, which admitted Missouri as a slave state, but banned any new slave states north of Arkansas. That's simplifying it a bit, because there's a line drawn, but that's basically it. This is not quite the brave new world Jefferson may have been hoping for. Earlier that year, Jefferson had written, "The government has not given it power of holding foreign territory and still less of incorporating it into the Union. An amendment of the Constitution seems necessary for this." His cabinet did not agree. They justified it on the basis of protecting Americans mainly from France, attacks from France. They put the deal forward anyway, and in the words of Jefferson, "In the meantime, we must ratify and pay our money as we have treated for a thing beyond the Constitution, and rely on the nation to sanction an act done for its great good without its previous authority."
Overreach.
But he's actually telling you here, he uses the phrase "thing beyond the Constitution," which even himself he knows it's anti-constitutional. Later, he said the whole operation was like a guardian investing the money of his ward in purchasing an important adjacent territory and saying to him, "When of age, I did this for your good." Well, you're not dealing with slaves now, man. You're dealing with American citizens, so get fucked. Jesus. His loose interpretation of the Constitution was directly... Fast and loose. His fast and loose interpretation of the Constitution was directly at odds with his Democrat-Republican principles, and was something he had previously criticized the Federalists for. A congressional vote to stop the purchase...
Where they're like, hey, look at this part here. You wrote this, bitch. You wrote this.
Yeah, I know, right? It's extraordinarily hypocritical.
Yes.
Yeah. But then, I guess, no war plan survives contact with the enemy. A congressional vote to stop the purchase failed 59 votes to 57, which is pretty tight. James Madison said it was almost too constitutional, so it went ahead. The United States did not have $15 million lying around, so they borrowed it from European banks.
Shocking.
And now we're going to talk about Florida for one paragraph. Drunk with the success.
It's all Florida deserves.
It's all Florida. Fuck that place, right? Drunk with the success of the Louisiana Purchase, Jefferson secretly tried to buy Florida from Spain for $2 million in 1806. When that didn't work, he got congressional approval to pass a bill to authorize $2 million to be paid to France, in the hopes of getting France to talk Spain into handing over Florida. The idea was as stupid as it sounded, particularly because they were almost on a war footing with France at this stage. France refused. Of course they did, and the idea died there. Now, there's more about Florida in a future episode, I assume we're going to do in John Quincy Adams, when there's all the juicy Florida stuff happens. Now we're going to talk about the Embargo Act, if we're okay with that. Embargo. In 1807, the following year, because he wasn't done fucking up, Jefferson passed the Embargo Act, which stopped ships and vessels in the ports and harbors of the United States. But in practice, this was aimed at Britain and France.
Yep.
In the middle of... Yeah.
Yep, I was agreeing, that's all.
In the middle of the Napoleonic Wars, which were between Britain and France and have nothing to do with any of these podcasts, the US did its best to stay neutral, but found itself involved at various levels with both Britain and France, which, again, we spoke about a little bit in the previous founding Feckheads. Yeah. And also during the first Operation Uphold Democracy episode, we did a bit of that as well. The distal cause, therefore, was to keep the US neutral of the Embargo Act. The proximal cause was the Chesapeake Leopard Affair. Oh, here we go. One of these boys.
Great title.
Isn't it? Chesapeake Leopard Affair. The British Navy ship Leopard had boarded the US Navy ship Chesapeake looking for deserters from the British Navy. And this was not entirely stupid. The American Navy at the time was full of British Navy deserters, some of whom had become American citizens in the meantime. It was not uncommon for Americans generally to serve on British ships and vice versa. Because there were still, I think they were still at this stage in 1807, they were still kind of deciding that they were a different country. They were still in the process of not being England. It was quite fresh. So the crossover would have been a lot. 3 of the Chesapeake's crew were killed in this, and 4 were removed from the ship as deserters, 3 American citizens and 1 British citizen. The British citizen was hanged. Fair enough. Fuck him, right? And I'm Irish, just in case. And the Americans were sentenced to 500 lashes each, but they were released before that happened. Traditional enmities in the American government were put aside as everyone got annoyed. Jefferson said, "Never since the Battle of Lexington have I seen this country in such a state of exasperation as at present, and even that did not produce such unanimity." So that's good. They're agreeing on something. They're agreeing that Britain can fuck off.
Yeah.
Diplomatic efforts for a more general resolution of having their men occasionally shanghaied by the British Army, or that's supposed to say Navy, sorry, by the British Navy failed. So Jefferson and his friends, you think that's unprofessional? How about that? The British Army, the British Navy failed. So Jefferson and his friends felt an economic boycott might be a more useful approach. However, this Embargo Act was the boycott. However, it had a number of effects Jefferson did not predict, although maybe he should have, because he was supposed to be the brains behind the operation, wasn't he?
Yep.
The act affected merchants, sailors, and port cities the most, as you would expect, particularly in New England. Well, the inland guys, I'd say, wouldn't be affected that much by a port embargo. Plummeting exports, obviously, and massive unemployment encouraged widespread smuggling, which, of course, completely undermines the tax revenue, right?
Yep.
Instead of the intended effect of punishing Britain and France, it hurt Americans, and Jefferson in particular, which sent meaning his public perception, not him personally, which sent the Federalist Party into record numbers in these areas. The whole Embargo Act business again challenged Jefferson's commitment to his own values, as he seemed happy to use federal soldiers to enforce the act and to establish a system of surveillance on international trade, which is kind of a fancy language, but that's also exactly what he did, and generally ignore the freedom of American citizens to conduct whatever business they liked with whomever they wanted. The whole point of America was it was supposed to be a free market thing, and now he's shutting down things and setting up embargoes, and this sort of militarism and big government intervention was more of a Federalist Party thing, which was much criticized by Jefferson when he was in opposition. The Embargo Act was so poorly received by everyone, Americans, British, French, and everybody, it was repealed in 1809, just 2 years later.
Well, I'm glad we learned about that because, we're not going to do anything like that going forward, tariffs.
No, we're not. No, we wouldn't try to set up, because it'll have the kind of unexpected effects that you can completely expect, given that we have a phrase, a Wikipedia page with the Embargo Act, why it went wrong written on it, more or less, right? What I wanted to know, these are all things I kind of knew about already, but something I didn't know about was anything to do with Aaron Burr. So I want you to tell me about that, please.
Yeah, and to be clear, again, out of probably everything that put into the script, at least I could say, honestly, this was the hardest to make it short because there's so much I'm leaving out.
Yeah.
So basically, Aaron Burr, if you didn't know, was actually the vice president. He was the guy that pushed it under Jefferson. He's the one that was going against Jefferson after Adams. Whenever we discussed how many ballots.
But he was in the same party as Jefferson, wasn't he?
I believe so.
Okay.
Sorry. I'll retain so much about this guy right now. But anyways, so this he leaves. There's a lot of infighting in Jefferson's camp, right? Him and Burr don't get along. He doesn't get along with Hamilton either. And Burr killed Hamilton in the duel, which again, the guy's a fucking hero for that. Killed the fascists. So this is after that. Basically, they decide, hey, we're going to go another round.
He didn't kill him because he was a fascist.
No, but bonus.
We'll take what we can get from history.
Yeah. So, anyways, so he ends up leaving. Pretty much. He ends up leaving. Sort of in disgrace a little bit, because they wanted to go another way. But he wanted to find a way to restore his honor. So he decided the best way to do this was engage in filibustering, which this is probably the only thing that I've read about Burr that I'm like, dude, no, that's just not cool. Otherwise, solid fucking dude. So he decides that he's going to try to get some land that belongs to Spain. He felt that the war between the two countries was imminent.
Wait, now, tell me. Sorry, go back. He said he's going to get his honor back by doing a filibuster of lands.
Yes.
What does the word filibuster mean?
Filibuster basically means that they would seize land.
Oh.
For America.
I thought filibuster meant you talk and talk and talk.
That's a whole thing. Yeah, I know. It's a confusing.
It's just a seizure of land.
It's a seizure of land.
Oh, sorry. Carry on.
Yeah. So, anyways. So he decides, this is the best way to do it. And he partners up with a guy named James Wilkinson, who was the commander-in-chief of the U.S. Army in New Orleans during the Louisiana Territory, which we just also discussed. Also, to real quick about this guy, fucking backstabber, shouldn't even still been around.
Wilkinson?
Yes, because he tried to help Horatio Gates, the conspiracy to oust Washington as general during the Revolutionary War. Just dirty piece of shit, which we're going to elaborate on shortly. Anyways, turns out he is a double agent. He's working between both Spain and America. Burr doesn't know this. However, the war didn't come, and Wilkinson decides to exploit his conflicting interests by betraying Burr's plans to Spain, to his spy masters in Spain, and to Jefferson. Wilkinson made it clear that Burr was seizing the land for himself and would set up a colony that would conflict with the interests of Jefferson, primarily slavery. Now, Jefferson knew that Burr was a staunch abolitionist, and if Jefferson allowed Burr to create a safe haven from slavery, it would damage folks like him who depended upon the labor to acquire capital.
So fucking cynical, isn't it?
Yes.
And this is the guy, by the way, Jefferson has already publicly said he is in principle against slavery, by the way, so it's not like... He's just, what would you call that? Just rank hypocrisy, right?
Yeah. Gross hypocrisy, yeah. Jefferson issued an order for Burr's arrest, declaring him a traitor before any...
He's the traitor?
Yes. Right? Burr twice turned himself in to federal authorities. Both times, judges found his actions totally legal, and he was released.
Okay.
Jefferson persisted, and Burr was arrested in February 19th, 1807. If Burr intended to found a dynasty that would be the former Mexican territory, this would just be a misdemeanor, right? Based on the Neutrality Act of 1794, which Congress passed to block filibustering expeditions against U.S. neighbors. However, the highest charge was sought against Burr because Jefferson was like, I want this guy fucking dead. Okay, he fucking just, he had a grudge, let's say.
Yeah.
1807, Burr was brought to trial on the charge of treason before the U.S. Circuit Court of Richmond, Virginia. Before the trial, Jefferson told Congress that Burr was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt and spoke openly about wanting him hanged.
You would never get away with that these days. That's a violation.
Right? Yeah, I mean...
even Trump wouldn't do that. He might.
He might, but I mean, so far, why do we not talk about this motherfucker? I mean, this is already far more egregious than anything.
Hi, Congress. Just let you know, we need to get this guy hanged. Don't want to influence the process or anything, but I'm the president, and we need to hang this guy.
Yeah, it's just, it's mental. So Burr had been arraigned 4 times for treason before a grand jury would indict him. So they had to do this 4 different times.
Arraign me like one of your French girls.
Yeah, probably. The only physical evidence presented to the grand jury was Wilkinson's so-called letter from Burr, which proposed the idea of stealing the land from Louisiana Purchase. During the grand jury's examination, the court discovered that a letter was written in handwriting.
Sorry, I read ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. He said that he made a copy because he had lost the original.
This is drifting into fucking, what do you call that? The Mormon guy, Smith.
Oh yeah, Joseph Smith. Yeah, it's just these plates that only I could read.
Yeah, I had to because I lost the original. Sorry about that.
The grand jury threw out the letter as evidence, and news was made. News made him a laughingstock for the rest of the proceedings. The trial was presided over Chief Justice John Marshall, began on August 3rd. General William Eaton's testimony was the first piece of evidence presented by the prosecution. During the testimony, Eaton kept referring to his notes when asked about conversations he had with Burr.
Okay.
Judge Marshall inquired about the notes that Eaton had, to which Eaton claimed that he had made them just a few days before the trial.
Okay, that's not quite all right.
Yeah. The defense asked Eaton.
Glad he asked him.
Yeah. So, well, the judge told him he couldn't refer to his notes anymore. So, the defense asked Eaton about the money that he had received from the government just before the trial. Eaton refused to answer, but was instructed by the judge, who had told him that he had to disclose this information. Turns out Eaton had received $10,000 from the government just before the trial.
Holy shit.
Eaton claimed that the money was reimbursement for expenses he had incurred during the Barbara War, and he left the stand in tears. He left town shortly after a sex scandal, so things did not go well for Eaton.
That's, what do you call that? Suborning, isn't it? I think the legal word for that is suborning. If you pay somebody $10,000 and say, "Here, read these notes in court," and pretend like it's their testimony, I think that's called suborning testimony, isn't it?
I don't know if that's a term, but that sounds right. Let's go with it. It's definitely crooked, right?
Yeah,
Article 3, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution requires that treason either be admitted in open court or proven by an overt act witnessed by 2 people.
I should hope so.
Since no 2 witnesses came forward, Burr was acquitted on September 1st, despite the full force of Jefferson's administration, political influence thrown against him. Burr was immediately tried on the misdemeanor charge.
You know what? In a way, doesn't that kind of give you a little bit of faith in the legal system?
Yes.
Of the courts. In this case. I mean, I know we trash them a lot, but, good for them.
Yeah. So he was indicted right away for the misdemeanor charge that we just talked about. The filibuster.
The Neutrality Act.
And he was immediately acquitted.
He was acquitted again?
He was acquitted again.
Oh, nice.
Given that Jefferson was using
Teflon Burr, they call him. Nothing sticks.
was using his influence as president to obtain a conviction and trial was a major test of the U.S. Constitution and the concept of separation of powers. Jefferson challenged the authority of the Supreme Court, specifically Chief Justice Marshall, and Adams' appointment, who clashed with Jefferson over Adams' last-minute judicial appointments.
Oh, the midnight judges?
Yep.
Yeah, we talked about that in the last episode, if you want to check it out. Funny Feckheads too.
Jefferson believed that Burr's treason was obvious. Burr sent letters to Jefferson in which he stated that he could do Jefferson much harm. The case, as tried, was decided on whether Burr was present at certain events at certain times in certain capacities. Jefferson used all of his influence. Yeah, because there was a point in time where he's supposed to be met with these people that were Confederates in this whole season.
Couldn't find 2 witnesses to it though.
Yeah, but I mean, it was proven beyond a shadow of doubt he was like 400 miles away when this went down.
Oh, is that simple? Okay.
Yeah, it's just everything was just a complete sham, just all bullshit.
Yeah.
Jefferson used all of his influence to get Marshall to convict, but Marshall was not swayed.
Hang on here now. I have a sentence up here. Is this here? You said about 10 seconds ago, Burr sent a letter to Jefferson in which he stated he could do Jefferson much harm. Did he mean like Alexander Hamilton much harm, or did he mean like...
I think it was more political.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, which actually I think there's some conjecture as to whether or not those letters are actually from Burr. They might be.
Oh, even that's faked.
there's people.
Were they also
I
in
don't
Wilkinson's handwriting by any chance?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. So maybe somebody else knows and could say in the comments. Let us know. Historians Nancy Eisenberg and Andrew Burstein wrote that Burr was not guilty of treason, nor was he ever convicted because there was no evidence. Not one credible piece of testimony, and the star witnesses for the prosecution had to admit that this doctored letter and implicated Burr.
So humiliating. It's so embarrassing for Jefferson and anybody to do with it.
Yeah, so...
and the Supreme Court held up the dignity of the country there.
Yep.
In fairness to them. Whatever dignity America has was held up by the Supreme Court there.
We can enjoy while that lasted, right?
Sometimes they do great. Sometimes they do all right, the Supreme Court. Not now, obviously, because it's packed to the rafters with idiots, but sometimes the Supreme Court in America has done some fantastic work.
Some.
Will we roll up to our conclusion?
We're rolling.
Thomas Jefferson's legacy is undeniably complex. His contributions, see, we don't in these founding Feckheads, we don't talk about all the good things they do, if there are any. We don't talk about the good things because that's already taken care of by whatever history books you had. Yes, this is just stuff that you should know, right? And particularly as an Irish person, it's incredibly interesting because all we get is like flashes and shadows, you know. Thomas Jefferson's legacy is undeniably complex. His contributions to the founding of the United States and the articulation of democratic ideals are significant, but they are overshadowed by his actions that often contradicted those principles. His involvement in slavery, imperialistic pursuits in Florida and Louisiana, and the politically charged persecution of Aaron Burr illustrate a pattern of moral and political contradictions. Again, the diplomatic language we're using. These actions, the word hypocrisy is not, anyway, these actions provide a more nuanced understanding of Jefferson, revealing a figure who, despite his lofty rhetoric, was deeply entangled in the moral compromises and power struggles of his time. Clearly, Jefferson may be the most hypocritical founding feckhead.
Yes.
And that is our tour of Thomas Jefferson's back arse end of compromised ideals.
Somehow we kept it well under an hour, and I have no idea how. This was a lot.
Yeah, I'm incredibly poor at judging how long. I thought I could just say a page is like maybe 5 minutes or something. It never works out like that. I just have to wing it. I think we did all right.
Yeah.
I think people might. The hope is that you guys, like me, you guys will have learned something you didn't know about before and go in with a more nuanced understanding, right?
Oh yeah, well, I didn't know about the Embargo Act. I mean, I knew about Louisiana. I didn't know that much about Florida either. So you educated me on this.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about Aaron Burr. All I knew for Aaron Burr is he's apparently in the musical, is he?
Yeah, they paid him as the bad guy. But the thing is, this whole liberal idea, fucking Aaron Burr was fucking a progressive at the head of his time. Hamilton, as a dig, was like, I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, hey, this guy actually asked for consent with his women before he hooks up with them. What's up with this guy? I mean,
Timmy Consent over here in the corner,
yeah. He was an abolitionist. He was against capitalism in a lot of ways. He was very progressive. Just a fish out of water in his time. So we need more Aaron Burrs and less fucking Hamiltons, that's for sure.
And I assume
less fucking Jeffersons.
And I assume Aaron Burr also has his own Wikipedia page if we want to find out more about that, because I know what I'll be doing as soon as we hang up. I will be checking out Aaron Burr's Wikipedia page, because I suspect you've left out chunks.
Oh, yeah.
Like you made a reference there to the Barbary War. I just skipped over all that, but there's a whole lot of stuff about in the Mediterranean, if you can believe.
That's a mess too, right?
Yeah.
So
that's only partially. I don't know if you could call it a fuck up of Jefferson's, but it was definitely a fuck up.
That's how we got the Marines, right? So
something like that,
yeah. But I would say Aaron Burr and Thomas Paine are probably the only.
Thomas Paine was all right. Paine got fucked.
Yeah, he did. There's a couple others. Shit, what's his name? James Otis, I believe is his name.
Never heard of him.
Almost a founding father, as some people would say. He gave a speech that was so profound. It was one of the first revolutionary talk in open court. Okay. So much that even Adams was like, and that day is whenever the revolution was born.
Nice.
Paints this guy as like the fucking real deal.
Every so often a man comes along.
Yeah, but he was such a curmudgeon and gave no fucks. He walked into like a loyalist pub, which I think was actually a coffee shop at the time. It was basically like "fuck you all" kind of thing, and they beat the living fuck out of him.
Oh wow! Okay.
The rest of his life. Yeah.
That would also happen if you walked into a loyalist pub in Belfast.
Yeah. Good times.
Good times. Yeah.
Free Luigi. Hey, we've got Leonard Peltier is out. So
Peltier,
yeah,
Peltier.
so I'm happy about that.
Happy about that.
That's one of the few things.
Yeah, I like your Luigi Mangione hat.
Thank you. I'm getting psyched up for Mario Kart. That's all this is, man. So I try to get myself through the game before I play.
Okay.
So
What machine do you play it on?
Xbox.
Xbox. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So, alrighty, folks.
That is our episode. Thank you for joining us. I don't know what we're going to be doing and what you're going to see in 2 weeks' time, but hopefully myself and Seamus will not be as unwell as we have been recently.
Yes. Alrighty, folks. We'll see y'all later. Bye.